All right, let's see. We're live, everybody. Welcome to Sorting Myself Out. My name is Brian Holzapfel. Please excuse the technical difficulties. I'm here with Mercury Black, Colton Holzapfel, and none other than our trusty assistant, Griswold Grimm. How you doing, guys?
All right, how about you?
We're hanging in there. I'm hanging in there, man. Just all that stress trying to figure out how to get this stream to work was crazy. But it looks like we're on now. Yep, we're going, and we've got. Hey, Grizz, switch it to. You've got it on the view where it only looks at the person. Can you switch it to gallery view on Zoom? Anyways, what are we talking about, Merc? You had a great topic for us today.
You want to start still with the same plugs? Colton did a great video recently that everyone should check out. It's in the description, and we've got a link for our Discord in the description as well. And we're going to host a watch party tomorrow at some point. Something both entertaining, but that will also allow us to have some discussion afterwards. So we don't know exactly when yet, but anyone who's interested in joining the watch party, join our Discord, and we will be posting updates there later tonight or tomorrow. So the topic for today was that it's too bad Jordan Peterson isn't active at the moment, because with everything going on in the world, I think now is an excellent time for people to implement some of the 12 rules for life, or for people to do the self-authoring program. And that with all the stress about what's going on in the world, sometimes it helps to focus on something you can control. And for all the worries that are completely out of your hands, for instance, following the rule to clean up your room, and from there even to go on and beautify your environment. For anyone who's feeling like things are out of control, the world's turned upside down, doing something as simple as a spring cleaning, organizing things that are actually under your control, will give some more emotional stability during these times. And that was my idea for launching a discussion. What do you and Colton have to say?
Well, Colton, you look pretty well sorted today. I would love to hear your feedback.
I think we were talking about 6 weeks ago or so, Ryan, about getting on and doing a live stream to talk about the disappearance of Jordan Peterson and all the rumors out there, and what's gone on. I heard he went to Russia, and I heard he went all over, and I just kind of wanted to discuss that with you because I really missed his new content. And even people just posting old interviews and old clips are getting tons of views, tons of things, because I think there's a deep need for somebody like that hasn't really been filled by anybody since his unfortunate medical collapse. And he kind of self-prophesized that it was coming. He said he was riding on the back of a 100-foot wave, and the most likely thing that would happen when that happens is that you crash and drown. So I hope he didn't drown, but it's not looking good so far.
Well, if it makes you feel any better, there was a Facebook post recently of him driving a remote control car in his backyard. Did you see that, Co?
No, I didn't. You should send that to me.
Yeah, I could actually probably share my screen so everybody can see it. It would be kind of cool for everyone to see. Let's see if I can share my screen here. And okay, it looks like I can. So check this out. Here's a little remote control car right there. And there's Peterson.
Look at his shorts.
That great? Isn't that great?
Oh, he looks skinny, man.
Yeah, wow. He lost. Yeah,
he looks fucking frail.
Yeah. So, anyways, that's
he looks frail.
At least he's doing something. He's up and about, and he's doing okay at least,
His legs are like twigs, man.
Yeah,
Oh,
holy shit.
Yeah.
Christ.
So there,
How recent is this video?
sure, I'll play it again. I was posted yesterday.
That is awesome to see him just playing with a toy.
I know, but he's playing with it so seriously. Only like Peterson.
He doesn't look necessarily happy about it.
It's a very serious enterprise driving remote control cars, guys. No, he's just having fun.
Well, his daughter said he didn't laugh for like 3 months when he was going through the treatment and the withdrawals.
Right.
So.
Right. Yeah, I know. I mean, I think it was a pretty grim time for him, and he always teaches about how life is suffering, and no matter how bad things are, they could always get a lot worse. And I always had the sense that he was like analogous to one of those figures from the Old Testament, and that's kind of his style. And it always gave me the idea that he was kind of this like Abrahamic, not like literally, I'm talking metaphorically, don't take it literally like a prophet, but he kind of constellated that archetype, and that was the life manifested around him in some sense. And so it didn't surprise me that he both had a astronomical rise to fame, but it also didn't surprise me that there was some really arduous testing that was done, because that was like the Old Testament story, right? Like the figures would be, given things and taken away from things, and it would be very dramatic. And I think his story parallels that to some extent, which I find fascinating. There's also the analogy people have used of Peterson being a lightning rod. And the thing about lightning is it comes really strong and fast, and it's very impactful at the time, but it comes quickly and it disappears quickly. So I think all the metaphors that we set up around Peterson had a psychological truth to them as far as his significance as a figure, perhaps.
Yeah, and I'm holding out optimism that in the long run, this will be a good thing. In fact, with both the situation with Peterson and the situation in the world today, I understand with both of them, it means things could collapse further in the future. I'm aware that from what we've gotten about Peterson, we don't know if he's ever coming back to work or not. But I definitely think there's a possibility for both situations that in the long run, it just causes an improvement. So with Peterson specifically, okay, yeah, and I'll relate it to personal experience. Like I had a very difficult winter, and I got pushed psychologically past a point I wanted to deal with this year. And I found taking that more Petersonian method, it really pushed my abilities with what I'm working on, like dealing with my bipolar to another level. And Peterson is very good at seeing the value that can be like the same as the danger involved with the dragon. He's very aware of the gold and the maidens that are in the chaos as well. So part of me is looking forward to Peterson coming back and hearing how what he's gone through this year has pushed him to the next level with his thinking. So I think he could get a lot out of this difficulty in a way that some other people can't. Like not everyone can hit a crisis and can come back with gold. Some people just come back mutilated by the dragon. But I think Peterson's one of those souls that can survive an encounter with a dragon and bring back a little treasure for everyone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think this recent situation made me really reflect on Peterson's teachings. It got kind of shook me to the core. And as somebody who really tries hard to embody as many lessons and as many lessons as possible from Peterson, to be in a time where, you know, I'm concerned for the safety of my loved ones, really gave me some great perspective on how valuable it is to, you know, sow the crops while the weather's good. And that that way, when, you know, when things turn rough and it's a brutal winter or something like that, you have ample supplies, um, you know, mentally, physically. Um, but, you know, if I hadn't had that, uh, I wouldn't have been anybody could rely on in the last few weeks. I would have just been a shell of myself. And in some ways I still was. So I definitely wasn't 100%, but I was able to
Mm,
get through it.
yeah, that reminds me. I was listening to Brett Weinstein podcast with his partner, wife Heather Haying the other day, and they were talking about how squirrels bury way more acorns than they need every year for the winter. And one doctor had commented, well, that's really stupid. They're never going to use all those acorns. But then they were saying, no, they're burying enough acorns for the worst winter that could happen. So it's not like they're going to use them all, but they're burying enough of them that if they ever needed them, they would have them. And that is really closely related to what Peterson talks about when he teaches about the archetype of the apocalypse. And he talks about building your ark like Noah. And you want to build an ark that is strong and sustainable enough that it can get you through the worst times possible. That's part of sorting ourselves out, is being prepared, being ready for the 100-year flood, so to speak. And he also makes a comparison between, I think it's Amsterdam or some European country versus New Orleans. And he says, well, New Orleans did not build a dam that was prepared for the Hurricane Katrina. On the other hand, they in Amsterdam or some other country he was speaking about, they built one that could endure a 500-year flood. And he was just talking about the importance, the psychological importance of preparation and being ready for when times get bad, because they're going to get bad, and you're going to face hardship in your life, and you want to be ready and strong for it. So I think that's a really good point, Colton.
Yeah, and I would just say that I love that analogy. Peterson cites it often with the dikes and the things built outside of cities and in flood zones and hurricane zones. And you have to link me to that podcast with Brett Weinstein, because that sounds really interesting.
Yes, they've done two so far, commenting on the current social and political and climate, or whatever you want to call it, during this crisis. And they're doing another one today at, I don't know, sometime this afternoon.
Yeah, and what's the Bible story? It's only half coming to me, but who was it who warned Egypt to put away 7 years worth of grain? Do either of you guys
Colton would know that better than me. Do you know that one, buddy?
Sounds familiar, but no.
Nope.
Okay, shit. All right, forget that. But there is something in the Bible similar that the squirrels are acting out exactly what at some point in the Old Testament some prophet warned Egypt to put away 7 years worth of grain.
Right.
And I think the story is that they listened and had 7 years worth of grain when famine hit, so that they were fine. But yeah, that idea that the squirrels live out, I'm sure, is in a whole variety of old stories and various religions. And even if, because you're right, that probably you should be prepared. And I think it's always good to be stoic, take the Seneca version of things and be prepared for the worst and really expect it. But also, even if you don't get that worst case scenario, so that idea of the person who looked at the squirrels and said, that's fucking stupid, they're wasting their time, is there's a value to it even if you never need it. And that's that psychological stability. Like if all of North America had years worth of emergency supplies put away, if instead of pushing doomsday preppers out on the fringe. We'd integrated that into society. And if we were ready to handle a once in 100-year crisis in every front, we would all be a lot more relaxed right now. And so if you prepare in some way for some disaster that never comes, what you do have is the security that if it comes, you're prepared. And so, and that's worth a lot, to just have less stress and anxiety.
Yes. Yeah. Indeed. It's almost like we need to address the title.
Well, I would say we could use Jordan Peterson more than ever at the moment, because right now people are under a lot of psychological stress. People have a lot of worries, and I think implementing some of his rules, doing things like his self-authoring, would be really good for people right now. And I think his perspective, and maybe I'm wrong, but I would imagine that if he were active, he would be directing people inward, that it's a great time to work on yourself, to clean up your own room. And I don't know what other advice he would have, but what I would like to hear from him at the moment, if he were active, would be not comments on the economic system or the political system or whatnot, but a discussion of various things that people can be doing themselves at home. Like, if lately you're finding yourself spending a lot of time with your family, it's a great time to improve family relationships, to really work on that dynamic. If, on the other hand, you're someone who suddenly finds yourself spending a lot of time alone, it's a great time to learn how to make the most of the things that you can achieve in isolation that you can't achieve when other people are around.
Yes.
And like, for instance, I think Sam Harris has been talking about, meditation and mindfulness, and that's great. That's a big part of it. I think if people were to mix self-authoring and Peterson's 12 rules with Sam Harris's meditation and mindfulness during this period, that they could make dramatic changes in themselves that would carry through for the rest of their lives.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And I think also too, I addressed this a couple videos back, but just noting the importance of times of transition psychologically. When we are in transition, we are particularly malleable from a neurological standpoint. We're adapting. That means that we have the ability to both take advantage of the possibility of creating new habits in our lives, as well as the possibility of deteriorating into more hellish habits or habits that are going against our purpose. And so the things that we do when our life is changing rapidly, they are very formative. And I just believe that it would be very wise to take advantage of this time to reflect on lifestyle. How do I want to live? What are my daily routines? What are the things that are important to me that I want to pay attention to? How am I directing my attention? And am I getting into that flow state enough throughout the day where I lose sense of time and place, and I merge with the object of my attention? Am I doing things that are meaningful enough to engage that flow state, or has this current climate robbed me of my sense of meaning and robbed me of my sense of flow so that I'm no longer able to enter into that state? Or maybe it's created an opportunity for the first time ever. I didn't like my job, hypothetically, or I didn't like my old life. So now I have an opportunity to experiment with a life that I might like. So I think there's a lot going on here that's opening up new possibilities.
Yeah, and I guess to go back to Grizz's question is, to me, I would love some insight from Jordan right now on how to adapt your life to something like this, as far as being willing to accept that you're not going to be able to do all the things that you'd normally want to do, and all the things that maybe you ought to do if society was open. I mean, for example, I was fasting for around 20 hours to 24 hours a day before this, and it just hit me so hard, and sitting inside all day, I just had to adjust to be fasting less, maybe just 18 hours a day. And that like felt painful because I built up this discipline and this routine with doing that, but it was unsustainable. I was irritable because I was inside all day. I had high stress levels from the situation. And so not eating on top of that was just, I couldn't do any work. I was not being productive. And so I had to adjust it. But I'd love to hear Jordan's thoughts on, when is it okay to compromise things like that? And how do you manage these stressful times, not just for an individual, but for society? But, that it would be very interesting to me.
Yeah, I agree. That's a really good point. Hey guys, I'm gonna step aside for a second. I'll be right back. Go ahead and keep talking.
No problem. All right. And so in Peterson's absence, then let's take a shot at working that out, the two of us. Okay, you're right. And I'll also throw out this offer for anyone watching. I'm doing a bit better. I'm not making any promises or anything because I could crash at any time. But if things continue the way they are, I'm doing better now. And I think I can handle more sessions with audience members. So if anyone's really struggling at this time and wants to talk to me, just leave a comment under the video when it's up and we'll arrange something. But so, yeah, on that note, what is it about the fact that you're finding you can't proceed with fasting the way you were that you're struggling with?
I'm very much like my father in the sense that I like to be doing something at all times. And whenever I take something on, I do it to the max. That's the big reason why I didn't want to drink anymore, and why I quit a lot of habits, is because I have trouble with moderation where normal people don't. And I'm sure you understand that. Ryan does as well. So as far as that goes, I either go 100% or 0, and there's not much in between. And so cutting back down to 18, which is fine. I did that for over a year. Feels like I'm going to 0, and it feels like I'm not doing anything. It feels like I'm being lazy. And there's a part of me I think there's a Peterson part of me that is saying that I could be doing more. But the facts of the matter is that I was giving it an earnest effort, and the irritability and the other side effects of being just stressed out the window, just couldn't do my work. So then I was doing the fasting, but I wasn't doing my work. So that same side of me was going, oh, well, you need to be doing this work. It felt like I was being torn in half. And there's more examples like that, but I've just had to adapt. I've really had to adapt my schedule and say, okay, I can't just work 8 hours straight a day right now. My stress levels are just not there. So I need to maybe work a few hours in the morning, take a little break, work a few more hours, and eat lunch, but it was frustrating, as it felt like I was coming down from the peak of a mountain.
Okay, so what I picked out there was, like, I heard you saying you have a sub-personality with a high drive. You have an inner Peterson Jocko type sub-personality. That sub-personality is irritated by you cutting back on the fasting. Now, I expect that sub-personality doesn't need you to be working on fasting specifically, but it's been focused on fasting. So it needs something else to focus on. And that's where I would mix in something more Taoist, or to go over to the perspective of consider there's a time to reap and a time to sow. There's a time to be planting and there's a time to be harvesting. So previously you were in the season of fasting. That was something that you could direct your ambitious sub-personality at. So the seasons changed. Perhaps it's not time to be planting that. What else can you give that sub-personality to do that fits with this season? I'm certain that there's something else you could be doing productive that will fit in to the current situation better than the fasting is.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been exploring with that, and I bought a longbow a few weeks ago. I've been practicing with that every day in the middle of the day, which has been awesome. And been practicing my guitar and doing other things. And I have a checklist I do every day that I've had to modify, and um, video editing yesterday and doing that. So yeah, I think I have been adapting, but there's always that lag period when there's a change, and it's just like it doesn't feel great at first. And then when you get used to it, it's like, okay, I could deal with this. But you know, I I felt lost for a solid week or two there, and I think it had a lot to do with the high stress levels. And um, you're totally right with the sub personality. I totally have a part of me that I call my disciplinarian, or my disciplined achiever, that just wants to constantly be going. And if we're not going forward, then we must be going backwards. Even if I am going forward a little, it's like, well, we could be doing more. We're wasting time, especially because, I'm a game designer, and right now this is the best opportunity ever for video game releases. So I'm trying to get this update released. And I'm putting a lot of pressure on myself to get that done. So it feels like I'm wasting time. But yeah, that's actually really good insight. I never really thought about it through my sub personalities, but maybe I should have been.
How about you, Ryan? You have anything to add?
Oh, that was just cool to listen to. I can definitely relate to the disorientation that gets created by times of change. And it's like that old saying, the only thing that stays the same is change. And as soon as we get used to something, eventually it's going to, turn in on itself, and we're going to have to adapt. And I think that there's something about learning how to remain consistent throughout change, and to be adaptable. Like, we have to be flexible when something comes in and interrupts our routine, it interrupts our way of being. We need to be asking questions like, what do I need to change? What am I okay with changing? What do I need to keep the same? And I think if we reflect on those things, it'll be a little easier. But I think it's just human at the end of the day to get thrown off a little bit by major transitions in life. And part of the seeking is finding your ground again, recentering yourself after you've been thrown off, and coming back to a place of clarity and flow and trust for yourself. And that's I think that's the razor's edge that we're all trying to walk as people who are sorting ourselves out, right? It's not going to be perfect, and there's going to be times where life demands certain things of us that overwhelm us, or become stressful, or create discord in our lives. And the way that we handle that, I think, is the test of our improvement and our character and our capacities. So I think it's a good thing to be tested in this way, because it shows. It's like, are you following the letter of the law, or are you following the spirit of the law? Are you connected to what you're doing? Do you have a vision, or are you just stuck in the monotonous repetition of actions, and you've lost track of who you are? Because if you've lost track of who you are, transitions are going to throw you off your path, and you're not going to find your way back. But if you stay connected to that deeper purpose, it doesn't really matter if it's the exact pattern that you were following before, as long as you adapt and you reconnect to the spirit of the vision that you're trying to live into, the deeper purpose. And I think that is one of the beautiful things that we have the capacity to do as human beings, is connect to that greater power than ourselves, whether it be a soulful sense of connection within, or a connection to what you might call God or the great mystery. We have this ability to transcend the monotonous and activate a sense of all encompassing purpose. And that is what gets us to get through hard times, or to adapt and change. I think Nietzsche said, a man who has a why can endure any how.
And another thing that came to mind to me that I think also like ties into what's gone on with Peterson. So, Colton, you were really kicking ass for a while. You were making, achievements and improvements, really moving forward, and like moving forward in a mindful way where you were actively planning your future. You weren't just going along with the flow. You were making progress, had a direction. Something came up and suddenly you're discombobulated and feel frustrated and you're not doing as well as you used to. Aside from all the discussion of how to move through it, how to find the opportunity in it, is also just that's okay. It's totally fucking okay that you're frustrated with this or whatever other things that you see as backslide. And the same thing with Peterson. He, pushed himself really hard. He had a great system of rules to follow and whatnot. And he collapsed under difficulty. That's okay. And I think a lot of people who work on self-help or spiritual shit think somehow that the enlightened master or the self-help guru no longer goes through emotional difficulties. And that's just not true. The enlightened person learns how to get through the difficulties in a different way. Like even with like the story of the Buddha, it's not that the Buddha achieved enlightenment and no longer experienced the difficulty of the world. I think, is it Mara, like the god of chaos or like difficulties? It's not that Mara stopped visiting the Buddha. It's that the Buddha learned to welcome Mara and invite Mara in for tea. That an enlightened individual learns how to love and be with their human suffering. They don't stop feeling it. And I would even take that into the example of Christ as well. Like Christ was not above suffering on the cross. He had his moment of, Father, why have you forsaken me? So sometimes people will look at a spiritual teacher or someone like Jordan Peterson or a psychologist, and if they collapse, think, oh, well, that's a sign they never knew what they were talking about. But that's not true. And if you've been working on self-help for years and you find that you're falling apart in a way right now that you're disappointed in, you might have had an unrealistic goal of what a sorted out person is really like. And if you've been on a spiritual path and at this time you find yourself feeling a lot of fear, don't tell yourself, oh, well, that's a sign I'm not making any spiritual progression.
Yeah.
It's okay to have all of our natural human emotion. And
Yes.
Enlightenment is not it's not getting above it in the sense of you don't have it anymore. It's learning how to mindfully step above it, to be with it, and to love difficulties.
Yes.
Not stop having them.
Merc, remember how I said that I've been dealing with irritability the last few days? So yesterday I was on the phone with Merc and I was just sharing with him how, man, I've been so irritable and I'm really working on not projecting that irritability onto others, because it's really easy when I'm feeling sensitive or upset and angry to get mad about stupid things like, why did you leave the dish in the sink? Or Mercury, why didn't you post this on YouTube? Or Colton, why didn't you do this? And to actually like realize that all that projection is just me not looking within and dealing with my own crap. It's not really about anyone else in this circumstance. So I've been working with that, dealing with that difficult emotion and trying not to, I think doing an okay job. I don't know, Victoria might tell you I've had a few mistakes here and there, but trying not to affect others in a negative way. And that involves a lot of mindfulness and being able to feel it without letting it overcome me, and be able to work with the different parts of who I am and have a dialogue and hold that tension. And yesterday I came home and it must be like the fourth, this is really ridiculous in my opinion, but it must be like the fourth time that this has happened. So our new neighbors, they have a really cute kid and another kid that they play with, and we have this like giant side lot with a hill, and they've been like pretty frequently coming into our yard to play, which the first time I was like, huh, like that's weird. Like, you know, like I'm not like the grumpy old man that's like, get off my lawn, don't be playing on my lawn. But there's a part of me that's like, they could have at least asked, like, hey, we're gonna play in your yard. But I was like, yeah, whatever. Then it happened again, and then it happened again, and then yesterday I came home from the walk I was on outside, and they were all on my lawn, and I was like, that was after I got off the phone with Mercury about how irritable I've been, and there's a part of me that just wanted to be like, I don't care if you're on my lawn, but you could at least fucking ask. You know what I mean? And then I just really thought about it and I meditated on it. And I was like, why do I give a shit so much? And the part of me, which I call the challenger, who was really upset, was like, well, next thing you know, they're going to be throwing a barbecue. They're going to be setting up tents. They're going to be having a bunch of people. There's going to be 50 people in your line. You're going to lose control over your whole house and everybody's going to start moving in and everything's going to go to shit. And it was just like, no, that's not what's happening right now. They're just playing in the lawn. And so I went to the more peaceful and accepting parts of me and I just let it go. It was like, oh, what a silly thing to get worked up about. But it was real for me. It was real for that part of me that was irritable. Part of me did care. And it would be dishonest if I suppressed it and said, oh, I'm above caring about that, or I'm such a good person that anybody could be on my lawn at any time. But to to actually acknowledge that there was a part of me that was upset and to make a choice. Like I could have made a mindful choice that I'm going to confront them, but I instead decided that that wasn't in my best interest and decided to let it go. And if they decide to throw a party with a bunch of tents, I'll confront them then, but that doesn't happen. That hasn't happened yet. So, and I doubt that it will. So it's crazy how intense our minds can cling on to these neurotic obsessions and these complexes, and working with them can be really challenging but also very rewarding. And this morning, just feeling so much better now after having let go of my resentment and my irritability, and entered into more of a state of grace and acceptance.
And Ryan, there's a huge chance that they don't even know that that's your lawn with the way it's set up, right? They might think that's public, like you don't know what they're thinking, right? But like the defensive side of the brain always wants to say, look at these people who don't give a shit about what I want or my rules or what I think.
Right.
When they just want their kids to play on some open space, and they might not. They could be like, oh, I don't give a fuck about this guy's lawn. Like that's in the realm of possibility. But it's also possible that they're just naive and ignorant about whose lawn it is or if it's anybody's, right?
Right.
And when I was a kid, I didn't give a shit about what other people wanted. I'd go playing through other people's yards.
Right.
Actually, when we were little, I remember like in the summer when it was hot, and I used to, like as a kid, would be biking around out on back roads and stuff. I used to just sometimes go, like complete stranger, but go up into their yard and drink out of the hose if we were thirsty.
That's awesome. But it's weird though, like it was like it's one thing that to see just a couple kids in your line with no adults, but to see like two adults in your line with two kids like multiple times in a week, I started asking the question like, what the fuck is going, like, and it just started bothering me more and more. Even though I'd like to be able to say that, oh, it's not a big deal. I had to be honest that part of me was actually aggravated, but it felt really good to let it go and just accept that, okay, if it actually gets to the point where they're setting up tents and they're having a barbecue, then we'll take care of it then. But like, I don't need to go in guns blazing. They're not doing any harm. So, and Colton, you make a good point. They might not even know. And I make, it's like the book, The Four Agreements, which is pretty good. One of the agreements is never make assumptions. And another one is don't take anything personally. And I was doing both of those things. I was assuming that they, just were violating my personal rights for no reason, and I was taking it personally.
Right, and that actually does you more harm than them being on the lawn itself.
Yeah, and then Victoria was laughing at me. She's like, "You're such an old man. Like you get grumpy about someone being on your lawn." And I was like, "God, you're right. Like, what is happening to me? What have I become?" Yeah.
And so, Grizz, you there? Oh, I don't know if he is.
He's muted. Grizz, you're on mute if you're trying to talk. I don't know what he's
I
doing.
was just curious if anyone saw the comments. Like,
I see the comments right now. Hey Grizz, if you can hear us, we're looking for you. And you're on mute on Zoom, so we can't hear you. Grizz commented online. It says, "Shouldn't those kids be in quarantine?" Yeah, I thought of that too. I thought of that too. And Grizz says mostly smiley face. Yeah. So
are there any other comments we should respond to, or do you and Colton have anywhere else you wanna, like anything else you wanna bring up?
Nolan clarified that the Bible story you were talking about was about Joseph.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah. Thanks for that, Nolan. You're very dependable on those types of things. And other than that, it's just been mostly people talking. Someone said, "What is the latest update on Peterson's health?"
As far as I know, it's the same thing that his daughter put out, over a month ago.
Yeah,
But she
maybe
said
just
he would
recap
be
that,
checking
because
in.
yeah,
Well, basically, she said that he's doing better, but he went through hell the last few months, and that he was on fentanyl. I think I don't want to be misquoted, but I believe he was on some
it might have been like Clonopin. I don't know, something.
some high anti-anxiety medication, very dangerous, and he had a severe reaction to it. And so it got to the point where when you try to get off one of those things with a severe reaction, just quitting cold turkey can actually kill you, and detoxing it can actually kill you. So they had to go to Russia and get some experimental treatment because they weren't offering it here, because the insurance risks were too. If that's not going to get this video taken down, I think it's probably good. Yeah.
Sure. Run it. Let me see if you can run it. You're muted, Rickery. Remember that song from like 2000 something? Is he a? No, there's a man on the floor. Okay, go for it. It's coming out the wrong side end. Let me see if you can run it. Run it. I don't know if I can run it. But did you have volume on that? Did you get audio on the Peterson thing? Here, I see. I've got the. You tell me if you can hear it. I'll play it. Can you guys hear that?
I can't hear anything.
Yeah, I don't think it's Grizz. I don't think it'll work. I could do it if I was on OBS, but I can't. It's not going to share my audio.
Well, I think if you
Zoom.
maybe link it in the description, people could watch it.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I mean, Colton, you covered it basically. I mean, she essentially said that he was, almost died. Basically, he didn't laugh for months. He was very miserable. He finally started to recover, but he has some sort of. It sounded like potential brain damage. I don't know. I need to watch it again. It's been a couple months, or it's been a month or so since she released it. Which Colton and I were talking that we were concerned because he's such an intellectual force. We were concerned that we were going to lose his great intellectual gift, which obviously his health is more important than his intellectual abilities at this point. But that was definitely among one of our many concerns.
Yeah, I mean that what a tragedy that would be, and I guess if it's the end for him, That car video didn't really make me feel any better about it, the way he was looking. But if it's the end for him, luckily he.
What do you mean by that? What do you mean the end of what?
If it's the end of his impact, I'd say, as far as what he's putting out. No, if he doesn't put anything new out, like worst case scenario, right? If he doesn't put anything new out, I think that he was like a supernova that burned very brightly. That'll have a large impact, regardless of if he never says anything again. There's hours and hours and hours and hours of footage people can watch. I mean, I've probably watched over 100 hours, probably more than that, of Peterson videos, and I haven't even scratched the surface of some of the content that he has out there. So it'll be sad, but at the same time, he's left his mark no matter what.
Yeah, I agree. But it's like he's done enough that if it's time for him to tap out, like, he's done plenty for the world. And if the rest of his life is going to be like no longer pursuing any of his professional interests, like, I still think he's contributed enough, and he's already had a large enough impact on the world that it's way the fuck more than anyone else does. But I'm also not counting him out. Like, if yeah, I would bet on him continue if it was like, if Vegas was putting up odds.
Mm-hmm. Like, would he just be replaying the same tapes, basically, is what you're saying? That would be different.
Well, if it
Right.
was going to be different, obviously we don't know what it is. But for instance, I don't think he was at the end. It's like, I don't think he was done his work there, because it's not like he was just rehashing things. And I get it that a lot of his stuff became very redundant, but he was going around to different groups of people and getting asked the same questions over and over again. On the other hand, occasionally he would have great conversations, like with Ian McGilchrist or whatever, where he would bring up, nobody likes talking about the edge of their understanding as much as they enjoy talking about what they've got down. But occasionally you would still see Peterson reach the end of his understanding, and you would hear him say, I still don't fully understand this, but. And for instance, one thing was, he would say, I still don't fully understand it, but I've had intimations that death is a good thing. And that, he's contemplated how it's a constant process of death just to be alive, all the microorganisms dying in us and everything. But I think Peterson still had a long way to go in understanding the more Taoist side, even though he was being much more vocal about the Western angle. With all the biblical lectures, I think when it came to where he said he was at the edge of his understanding, it was often at the point where it was bringing in more Taoism, or perhaps more paralogical things.
And metaphysical in general.
Yeah, exactly. And I think he was still actively trying to pursue that. I can't necessarily predict what material he would come out with as a result of that, but I think he could still produce new things.
Yeah, well, he took a page out of Carl Jung's book, and as a psychologist, Jung would often say, listen, we can't say what's out there for sure in outside of the human perception, right? Like, this was the Immanuel Kant's, one of his great contributions. we can't really know the thing of itself because we view the world through our biased perceptive mechanisms. So whatever it is that's actually real, capital R, we don't know, but we know that we can experience life through this medium that is the human body and psyche. So Carl Jung would often say, what I can tell you is what's real for the psyche. I can't tell you what's real externally to the psyche. And Peterson, I think, out of his great respect for Jung, found it wise to maintain that approach. And he has said, "I act as if God exists." Well, that's essentially, I don't know what's really real, capital R, but I know that what's real in my psyche is that God exists for me psychologically. Um, and so yeah, you're right, Merck, that he didn't tread past that Kantian line very often. And I think when he did, he would say things with a lot of humility. I don't know, but I have had intimations and things like that. But it would be very fascinating to see him explore the metaphysics of reality more and see what's beyond that veil. So Grizz, to answer your question, I don't know what he would say that's different. What I do know is that it's nice to have live updates, recurring updates, even though he might be replaying the same tracks, replaying his greatest hits, so to speak. We've all heard this song before, but it's just nice to hear him say it from this new fresh time that we're in. So I think that would be nice. But at the same time, you have a really good point, Grizz, in that he has contributed a main body of work, and if that's it for him, then I'm satisfied with that. But I would like to see him, because of his mind is brilliant enough, I would like to see what other accomplishments he might be able to pull out of his hat. But maybe you're right, maybe there's not much left to be done.
Well, and another thing is that Peterson isn't just a set of ideas. He's a human being with a brain that has an evolving set of ideas that adapt to situations and things as they come up. So when new situations arise, we as people who follow Peterson and intellectually, and we pretty much, we know his ideas pretty well. I mean, we couldn't tell you nearly as well as he could about his response to this situation that's coming up, or what he would say, or what he would say to a new situation coming up. We can only speculate, and we can only take his body of work and try to apply it. But at the end of the day, when a new situation arises or something new comes up, Peterson's the only one that will be able to tell us what Peterson thinks about it, and what he would say and his interpretation. And that being said, I think it's important that as long as he's willing to give, that he does continue to give, because I mean, he rose to be the most famous public intellectual in the world not too long ago, and I think it's kind of died down. And he was helping a lot of young men, such as myself and others. And now that he's kind of faded back, not his ideas have not faded back, but him as a personality, I think less people will be able to have the same amount of help they would be if he was still around, regardless, and if he's just regurgitating what he's always said. But if you're a young person in dire straits, and you see a video that was uploaded 5 years ago from Peterson, you might think that's great. But if you see it's a video that was released yesterday, and that he keeps releasing videos, and what does he say to this thing, and what does he say about global affairs in this way, and how people are handling this, it helps to give it a more modern sense, rather than reading Greek philosophy is fine, but it lacks contemporary issues. And so, even though it's recent, at a certain point, you do want new perspectives on new situations from the man himself.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I've appreciated about Sam Harris during this time, is he's continued to give us his thoughts. And here's the thing with me is that I like I like the Eric Weinsteins talking. I like the Brett Weinsteins. It's a shame to have the Petersons missing from that perspective, because I want to hear what the intellectual dark web is saying. Like uh Douglas Murray, that's his name, right? Am I not saying that?
Yeah.
I think,
Right.
yeah, Douglas Murray. You know, he just did an interview talking about the current issues that we're dealing with globally. So I don't know. I just feel like Peterson's an important voice among that group that it would be good to have because it creates this really rich dialectical tension. And I think what emerges out of that for me as a listener, as a learner, whatever you want to call it, is a sense of interdisciplinary perspective, and then it pushes me to find my own opinions on things. And that's another thing that Peterson was really helpful for me, at least, is that he would push my thinking to the level where I could either come to see that he was right, or I could have to form a well argued opposition to that would push me to grow. So uh, either way you slice it, it was just really useful to have him around and active.
The other, oh, sorry. Go ahead, Grizz. Okay, and first I'll also just wrap up one other thing about just why Peterson might have new ideas, and then I'll go back to what you just said. The other reason I would enjoy it if Peterson were active again was that, like Ryan pointed out, he's very aware that he doesn't know metaphysical reality. He's open minded to that. And even though he didn't discuss it often, he's had a number of mystical experiences, visions, and dreams that have affected him. So even if his logical train of thought was reaching the limit of what it was going to discover, at any time Peterson could have some sort of mystical experience that he won't know whether it's metaphysical or psychological, but it could give him some profound insight at any point. And being someone who takes the metaphysical very seriously, I'm always hopeful that Peterson's going to have another mystical vision and be explaining something to us that isn't coming from his monkey mind figuring it out, but from some sort of divine inspiration. Okay, so but to cut ahead to, all right, Peterson's not fucking here. What do we do now without him? So I would say the first thing is to examine your reaction. Don't limit yourself to Peterson's knowledge. Mix Peterson's work with Harris's mindfulness and with the idea of how do I find opportunity in crisis? And that's going to be the other problem, because I know, like Grizz, that you are often saying, okay, Peterson's work tells us how to sort ourselves out, but it doesn't tell us what to do once we're sorted. And the thing there is that when it comes to individuation and certain kinds of self-help or spiritual progresses, the beginning steps are more general for everyone. But as you move forward, you need to unfold what you are. And so the more advanced levels of spirituality and sorting yourself out become less general. So it becomes very important. When you sorted yourself out, what happened? When you cleaned your, okay, so you say, I've cleaned my room, I've done that. What do I do? Well, look around the room. What kind of clean room do you have? If your room is clean and organized and it's full of art supplies, then I have a feeling moving forward will involve art. If your room's clean and organized and it's full of philosophy books, and I think moving forward, so it's going to get very down to the person. And if it's specific about during this crisis, the first thing I would say is observe yourself. So look at your environment. What is it telling you about your purpose? And look at yourself. So for instance, are you upset or excited? Because we could have one of those two reactions. Like Ryan pointed out, every moment of crisis is a moment of profound opportunity for dramatic transformation in two directions. Which are you seeing? Because both realities are there. So if you're feeling super optimistic, wow, this is great. Everything's getting flipped upside down. I see all the opportunity here. This is the beginning of a golden age. Then you're going to move a different direction than if you observe yourself and say, okay, I'm shitting my pants. I'm worried about everything. I'm irritable. I'm snapping at people. Then obviously you have some shadow work to do right now. Someone else tag in.
Well, I'll go to answer Grizz's question. I think Peterson, if he was around right now, I think he would be telling everybody the same thing he's been saying, and what he's been saying for since he came onto the scene is personal responsibility, and to take maximum amount of responsibility you possibly can, because that's where you'll find the most meaning. And it's not necessarily going to be lead to happiness, but as Peterson says, happiness isn't necessarily the best value to achieve in life. Meaning is. So finding meaning in the situation, how can you be a beacon for your family? How can you be a beacon for your loved ones and even your community, even though, we're kind of all separated from our communities right now, but how can you, one example is, doing a video like this, or doing something to sort of take responsibility yourself and be a light for others, because that will actually help you rising up and taking more responsibility, instead of just saying, I'm stuck inside for 3 months. I'm gonna watch Netflix every day and wait until I can go back into the world, and I'm gonna feel like shit every day because I'm not doing anything, because this circumstance I can't control. It's like, yeah, you can never control your circumstances, but you can always control how you respond to it, and how much responsibility you take for it. And I think he'd be preaching that. Ryan, you're muted.
Oh, I'm here. Yeah, thank you, Colton. I know you got to go, so I'll say my piece and then we'll wrap everything up here. First of all, I made a video a few days ago called "Finding Purpose in Times of Chaos." I would recommend checking it out because it addresses this question in how to handle this situation, not necessarily from Peterson's perspective, but just some useful tips. What would Peterson say? I think you guys covered that. I just want to say what I would say and circumvent your question a little bit. I think I would just echo the emphasis on looking inward. I would echo Mercury's emphasis on figuring out where you are. Where am I right now? What is my current experience? Because if we can dig into our current experience, it tells us a lot about where we need to go from there. And Mercury, you covered that quite well. I would say too, now is the time to look within. As the world begins to become strained, we are ever more. The onus is on us to look within for resolve. When things are unresolved externally, the only place that we can actually find that resolve is within. And so I think for me now is a time to let go of the externalities and look within for purpose and look within for meaning, and to remember, like, oh my gosh, I depended on this aspect of the world for this part of my meaningful engagement. I depend on this social dynamic for this psychological health that I am used to having, and now that's not here. So how can I generate that deep sense of need that I have for those things within myself? What would it look like? Where can I create where can I fill in the gap where there's a void? Not only for myself, but bigger than myself. How can I do that for the people around me? How can I make things easier for my brothers and sisters, my friends and family, whether that be within I won't say the magic words that get us, taken away on the algorithm, but the point is that within the confines of our current experience, it's good to consider how I can be of service. How can I make things easier on other people? Because one of the core aspects of suffering is selfishness. When I'm too focused on me, I am more miserable. When I'm more focused on how can I help? How can I contribute? How can I serve? Then things tend to get a lot easier, ironically, even though I'm taking on a bigger burden of responsibility. So I just think that whatever we can do, whether it's big or small, to make someone else's day a little better right now is huge for our psychological and general mental health. So yeah, that to me is those are the essentials right now. I think I about covered what I had to say there, and I think the personal responsibility piece is huge because Peterson often talks about the importance of the individual and how in this time right now the he didn't say it about this time right now, but how what's happening right now is that the individual is caught up in a social hierarchy that's way bigger than it, right? And so it could be easy to be like, oh, I'm powerless over this situation. Nothing I can say or do is going to help. I can't do anything. And that would be the opposite approach to what I think Peterson would advise, which would be to look within and take responsibility for your actions, even if it's as simple as just doing some yard work in your backyard or calling someone to ask them how their day's going. But do whatever you can to sort yourself out and focus on your individual development. So I guess that's how I would conceptualize the question.
Yeah, and to wrap it up like more succinctly, I would say, like, first of all, make sure you're really sorted if you're claiming you are. Don't bypass the look outwards because you're not. But if someone's had enough lockdown and they've been doing the work and someone's honestly saying they're sorted, like the yard work's done, their house is clean, their shadow is well integrated, then if your question is, I'm sorted, what now? Fucking help somebody. All right, you're sorted, show me you're sorted. And if you're sorted, you should have no problem helping somebody. And not get evangelical and go tell people what to do. Offer someone some help that they genuinely want. And nothing's too small. Nothing's too close to home, or nothing's too broad. If you're sorted, do something for everyone. Whatever your natural gift is, express it.
Yeah, and that's beautiful. And the other side of that is if you're not sorted, helping someone can be very healing as well. So in either case, it can be a very useful thing to do. Hey, Colton, I know you got to go. Thanks for joining us, brother.
Hey, yeah, appreciate it, guys. Thank you.
Yeah, it was great talking to you. Let's do it again sometime soon.
For sure.
Yeah, and everyone who's listening, we would really appreciate a like, a subscribe, and anything you can do to share or support our content is fantastic. Thanks for tuning in. Thank you, Grizz, for all your help. It's been really, really great to have you here moderating the stream. All right. Sounds good.